Hello, whoever, wherever, whenever, and indeed whatever you are. This is Function Render Dream, aka Andy XR, from the Deforum Discord server, bringing you a new tutorial, and this one is about the current hot topic of the day. Stable Diffusion XL and ControlNet. Finally, we have ControlNet support for Stable Diffusion XL. Cast your minds back, not too far. Stability AI released SD XL onto the public, version 1, to quite a big fanfare. Pretty awesome model, gets some incredible results. But one of the first questions people were asking was, okay, so where's the ControlNet for it? Now, it wasn't as simple as using the existing ControlNet with SD XL, because the ControlNet 1.1 models were all trained on Stable Diffusion 1.5 base. So new models were needed, and it's taken some time for those to emerge. But finally, we do have a pretty usable set that we can use in Deforum and Automatic 1111. So there's quite a few updates that dropped recently. Firstly, there's Automatic 1111 version 1.6, which is what you will need. Then there's ControlNet 1.1.4, which is the one that supports XL ControlNet models. And then also there's a new latest version of the Deforum extension, my favorite obviously, which has support for Automatic 11 1.6 and ControlNet XL models. So all of those things will be needed. So let's jump into how you get that running. I'm already using A1111 version 1.6. If you're not, then all you need to do is navigate to your web UI folder of Stable Diffusion, go into the command line, type in cmd, let's bring up a command prompt, and you just type in git pull and hit return, and that should update and pull in the latest changes. If it's running already, make sure you restart it. So that's pretty easy. The next thing that you'll want to do is update your ControlNet extension and your Deforum extension if you have them already installed. So if they are already installed, all you need to do is go over to extensions, go to the installed subtab, hit check for updates, and then it'll tell you if you're running the latest, or if you're not running the latest, it'll give you a checkbox telling you that you can select this. And then if you hit apply and restart UI, it'll download the latest versions of those two extensions. So you will need the latest ControlNet and the very latest Deforum and 1.6 Automatic 1111. Next, because we're using XL, you will need the ControlNet XL models, and there's quite a few of them. I will provide links in the description of this video. So on the ControlNet Hugging Face page, and a prize to anybody that can pronounce this name for me. I'm not going to embarrass myself and try it now, but if you go to the ControlNet Hugging Face page, you'll see that there is a new section called SD Control Collection. If you click on this and then go to Files and Versions, you'll see a whole bunch of safe tensors with the letters XL inside them. So these are a bunch of available trained ControlNet models based on Stable Diffusion XL. Now you can be picky and just choose the ones that you think you're going to use, or you can be like me and intensely greedy and download all of them. Some are quite small, others are quite big. They go up to about 2.5 gigabytes. Don't think there's anything much bigger than 2.5 gig. So you will need to download those, or download the ones that you want to use, so that's important. Additionally, it's worth noting that the ControlNet 1.1 models are still available, and obviously they are because that's still an active version. And there's this section here called ControlNet version 1.1. Go to Files and Versions, and here are all the old models as well. Okay, you need to have those downloaded before we can do anything else. Now I'm going to show you a tip which you might find quite handy. So look at File Explorer. I have a folder on my disk called SD Models, and in there I have folders for each of the model types that you can use in Automatic 1111. So I have a ControlNet folder, So here are all the ControlNet 1.1 and ControlNet XL models and files. I have an embeddings folder for my textual inversions. I have a LoRa folder with all of my LoRa models. And I have a stable diffusion folder which has all of my checkpoints for just doing regular stable diffusion. And then I have a VAE folder as well, which has currently got an SDXL VAE in there as well. Okay, now I've done this because I run more than one automatic 1111. So I have one instance which is connected to like the latest dev branch of everything. So it's buggy and it might break. I have another automatic 1111 which just has Deforum and ControlNet, which is what I do all my rendering with. And I have another one which I do image rendering with because it has a bunch of other extensions installed. And if you're familiar with the Discord server, you'll know there's quite a lot of conversations that happen about how certain extensions can interfere with Deforum. So that's why I have separate installations. So I know that one of them is clean and the others are more like playgrounds. However, the issue with having three A1111s is that what you don't want to do is to have each of them have their own set of models. You would quickly fill up your hard disk. It would come to hundreds of gigabytes. So by storing all of your models in a single location, you can then configure automatic 1111, each of them, to point at that model location so that they're all shared amongst your different instances. And I'm going to show you how you do that. In your A1111 folder, it's called Web UI. In here, you scroll down, you need to edit your Web UI user.bat file. And look at the command line arguments. So I've got my port set up. I'm not using Xformers. I'm using the optional SDP attention command line argument. Maybe that's for another video. But here are the important parts. A1111 lets you pass in your checkpoint directory or your model, your standard model folder, the directory where your LoRa's are, where your embeddings are, where your VAEs are, and where your control nets are. So all you do is you give it the flag --CKPT-dir and then the path to where the models are. If you're using backslash, you must use double backslash or else it loses the backslash. So as you can see, my checkpoint directory is pointing at that folder I showed you with stable diffusion models. My LoRa directory is pointing at my LoRa folder, and my ControlNet directory is pointing at my ControlNet models folder. So all of those Hugging Face models, all of the YAML files, all of the PTH files are all downloaded into that ControlNet folder. That means that each of my automatic 1111s has this same set of command line arguments other than the port, because obviously they all need to be different if you're going to run them at the same time. But they are all sharing the same set of models, and it's saved me a ton of space. Okay, that's that. So today we're going to take a video and pass it through an exclusive XL-based pipeline. So we're going to send it through an XL model through to XL ControlNets. And that video looks like, if I go over here, it's a dashing young man in a very fashionable hat and looking kind of happy in a desert location. No idea who he is. Hopefully he didn't walk backwards and fall off into the gorge. That would have been horrible. But there he is. So we're going to take him and turn him into something else entirely. So let's put him away. Boom. Okay, so let's go back to our automatic 1111. So the first thing we need to notice is that we need an XL base model. It's not a good idea to try to run the new ControlNet XL models against the 1.5 base model. So in my stable diffusion checkpoint, if I drop that down, here are all my regular models. And those that are being trained on XL have the letters XL in them. So we have DreamShaper XL, a pretty popular one, ProtoVision XL, and also the one from Stability AI, which is the base model, XL base, which is awesome, actually. If you've not had a chance to play with that, generating still images, it's pretty incredible. So I'm using this one here called ProtoVision XL, which is from the civitai.com website. It's highly rated. Lots of people are using it currently. There's no need for a separate VAE. That's baked in, so that's quite useful. So I'm going to choose that one. And we also need to note that SDXL is optimized for an image pixel density, I guess, of 1024 by 1024, just over 1 million pixels. So if you want to get the quality that you're expecting from SDXL, you do need to make sure that your width and height accommodate that number of pixels. It doesn't necessarily have to be 1024 on each side. It could be 1098 by 1000. Can't do the maths at this point, but either way, you want to set a width and height which gives you that number of pixels. But in this case, I'm going to keep it easy. I'm going to use 1024 by 1024. So we're going to turn that vertical video into a square video. It'll just crop it. So that's the first thing. You'll also notice with the latest version of Automatic 1111, there are some new samplers, the new DPM 3Ms, and some others down here, Adaptive UniPC. I haven't tried these yet, so I'm going to use good old Void Array, which actually does really well. And I'm going to knock the steps down, make things a bit quicker, knock it down to 20 steps. By the way, another good model for this is the DPM++ 2SA. That's been given good results. Going to give my batch a name, so we're going to call this SDXL CNET Man. There we go. Start off with a random seed. Okay, let's work our way across. In terms of keyframing, I'm going to keep the animation mode as 2D in this particular case because it's a little bit faster and I'm not actually going to do any animation. So I'm just going to leave it as it is, 2D. I'm going to get rid of any motion, so I'm going to get rid of this value in here and just leave it as 1 because a zoom of 1 means static. I'm going to set the strength. That's about, I think that's okay. 0.65, maybe a little bit lower, make it change a bit more, not too much. Set my CFG, doesn't have to be high, maybe like 6. And the seed, my favorite, which is seed behavior, is ladder. So it kind of climbs up a couple of values, then it drops down 1, then it goes up a couple more, then it drops down 1. So you're always getting, almost like you're getting consistent change. That or alternate are my two favorites. Okay, so I've set my seed behavior, nothing to do in motion. In terms of noise, you could add some additional noise. I'm going to switch that off, and I'm going to drop my noise schedule to be really low as well. Nothing to do in coherence. We're not doing any optical flow cadence because I'm going to set my cadence as 1, so every frame will be diffused, which means this will take quite a while, but that's okay because you won't have to put up with that because I'll fast forward it. Make it 400 frames. That'll work for me. And on our prompts, I'm going to put here an explorer wearing a red hat and sunglasses. Let's put something like fantasy background, stormy sky. Quick and easy. I'm sure I could add a whole lot more stuff in there, but I know that with SDXL actually you can get away with fewer details in your prompts. You don't really have to start putting things like masterpiece, 4K. It's just really good at producing good results. So we'll leave that as it is. Not doing anything on the init. We're not doing any video initialization because we're doing everything in ControlNet. And I'm just going to skip over to output because I want this to be 30 frames per second, which is the same as my input video. What I can also do, I can choose to delete all the images once we've finished, so you can use those, which is great for saving some disk space. We won't be doing any hybrid video in this case, but I do recommend that. I've got another video where I combine ControlNet with hybrid video, so but for this one, we're not going to do that. But we are going to get stuck into the ControlNet slots. All right, for the first ControlNet slot, let's enable it. Now this is a man, rather dashing man, may I say so myself. So let's use an OpenPose preprocessor. So we can use the OpenPose face. These have not changed. There's only one additional new one, which is these IP adapters, which obviously for in painting, so they're slightly different depending on whether or not you're using 1.5 or XL. But I'm going to use OpenPose face because that's a good preprocessor preprocessor for faces, believe it or not. And the model we want to send that preprocessed image to needs to be an OpenPose XL model. So here are the XL models. They've all got XL in them. Here's some diffuser ones. Here's some Koya ones. I've been playing around with these anime OpenPose, but I'm going to leave those alone for now. We've got the ones from Stability AI, which are actually LoRa's, but they're also usable as ControlNet models. But the one I'm going to use should be at the very bottom. It's this one here called Tibo XL OpenPose, which I know works really quite well. So that was one of the models that you'll find on Hugging Face. Okay, I'm going to bump the weight up, make it really prominent, make it up to like 1.4. And that's all we need there. And now I need to put the path to that source video. So let's go back to my inputs folder, right click or shift right click on Windows 10, copy as path, and then paste that path straight into the video path field and set my prompt is more important. Okay, so that'll take care of recognizing facial features. We use Pixel Perfect, although I don't think you need that for OpenPose. For the next ControlNet, I'm going to use something which will provide the model with some good outline details. So Canny is great at doing that. So we'll use a Canny preprocessor. And again, we have an XL Canny model. So I'm going to use this big one here, Diffusers XL Canny Full. Now I'm going to use a tip which was shared with me by an awesome animator. You can find him on our Discord server. His name's Adam. He has a YouTube channel, which I'll put a link to, and he's done some incredible shorts where he's taken existing videos and he's put them through Deforum, and the results are pretty incredible. And so he shared a little tip. So I'm actually going to have 2 Canny slots. We're going to set the weight to be quite high, maximum of 2. And on this one, I'm going to have it start at the beginning of the frame's render, so 0. And I want it to end about 1/3 of the way through rendering that frame. So I'm going to set it to 0.35, set it to pixel perfect. So this means that this Canny preprocessor will work on the frame up to about 1/3 of the time and then stop. And then this 3rd slot, we're going to put another Canny. Make the weight quite chunky. So there's lots of influence here. And this will start where the previous one finished. So we'll put 0.35, that's where the other one ended, and it'll end at 1, which means about 35% of the way through the render of the frame, this ControlNet kicks in, and it'll end once the rendering is finished, i.e. it'll happen all the way through the whole rendering of the frame. Set pixel perfect. I always like to have on my Cannies, I put the threshold a little bit lower so it picks up a bit more detail. So set them both to about 67 or so. Cool, all right. And again, we need to give it the path of our video. Boom. My ControlNet's more important. Excuse me, my prompt's more important. And then finally, I'm going to use a soft edge model, which needs to be hooked up with this thing called HeadSafe preprocessor. And again, there is a soft edge XL model for this. So if I scroll down, we should find it here. Sarge ZT. Sarge ZT. So we're going to use that one. Again, chunky sort of weight, high influence. Keep the control steps as they are. Pixel perfect. Put the path. Thwack. My prompt is more important. That's it. That's all we need to do. So in summary, we have not too many steps, because you'll see you don't need that many steps with XL. We've just got, there's no animation, there's no movement animation, ladder, seed, decent enough CFG, strength isn't too high, no noise, nothing on the coherence. Have a very simple prompt. Again, I would encourage you to explore the different ways you can prompt with SDXL. Nothing on the Unix, we're not doing anything with hybrid video or video init or masks, and that's all we have to do. Okay, so I'm going to hit the generate button. This is going to take some time, so I will cut all that boring bit out and we'll see what the results are. Okay, so let's see what we have. If I go over to my There he is. If you look closely, you see how the background's moving around. And if you look at the way that the image is changing, you can tell we're using the ladder. So you can sort of see it flickering because it's got a different seed, but then it goes back to the same seed, then back up a couple of seeds and back down. It's done a good job with the hat as well. I didn't have to use any IP2P instructional stuff. I didn't have to say make his hat red. Just said he's wearing a red hat. It's respected the sunglasses. It's given the guy a mustache every now and then. I could enforce that if I needed to with some weights on my prompt. But this is just showing you that it works, and it works really well with a very simple prompt. And we've got this sort of eerie sort of photographic quality coming out of that. Okay, so that shows you that Stable Diffusion XL works with the new ControlNets, which works with the new Deforum. So all that stuff is working really well. Now I just wanted to share with you a couple of extra bits which you might find useful. If you are struggling with how long your renders are taking when you're using ControlNets, it's worth heading over to the Settings tab, scroll down to ControlNet, and in here there's a setting called Model Cache Size. Now this will basically cache up to 5 ControlNet models. The reason why that's useful is because if you leave this at the default, which is nothing, each model has to be loaded from the disk, and some of those models are quite big. So for each render, for each frame render, it has to load up, in some cases, some gigabyte files, which can take quite a long time. So if your video card has enough video RAM, which is where the model cache is kept, I highly recommend that you set this value as high as you possibly can. Then that way, when you look in the console output, you can see how it's saying it's loading the model from cache, but on the first frame, it just says loading model. So it needs to render the first frame before it then stores the models in a cache, and you can store up to 5 of those. So that will definitely increase, or rather decrease, your render time. An extra thing is that there's a new feature coming quite soon where Deforum will respect this slider here, this ControlNet unit number. So if you were to set this up to 7 and you restart, Deforum will give you 7 ControlNet slots. That's not out yet. They're doing some testing, and hopefully I'll be able to get that merged into the main branch soon. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. Not much else to say other than play with the different models. Notice how there's more than one type of each model in most cases. We have 2 different cannies from Stability AI. We have a canny here from the Koya team who wrote the Koya SS app, which lets you do LoRa training and other types of training. There's more canny models here as well. So it's worth experimenting with these to see which ones give you the right results. I've yet to play around with the T2i models, but I hope to soon. And also I haven't tried any of the Stability AI LoRa models, which you can plug in, but I would encourage you to have a play. So that's it. It's really straightforward, and once you're using that, you'll be up and running with XL. The only thing is, because it's using such a high pixel density, it's pretty slow. I'm running a RTX 3090 with 24 gigabytes of video RAM. And on this animation, I'm getting 1.14 iterations per second, not quick, compared to SD 1.5, where that's up to like 12 or 13. When you're using XL, you're going to have to find something else to do while your machine cooks itself. Okay, that's it. I will catch you at the next one, and have a nice day. Ta-ta.